Admiral Vortak sat in his command chair aboard the massive Imperial warship Dominator, watching the stars drift past through the main viewing window. His ship was one of the most powerful vessels in the Galactic Empire's Third Fleet, stretching nearly 2 kilometers from bow to stern and carrying enough firepower to level entire planets. The bridge hummed with quiet efficiency as his crew monitored the vast emptiness of space near the restricted zone around Centauri Prime. "Sir, we have an unknown contact approaching our position," announced Lieutenant Kextar from the sensor station. The young officer's voice carried a note of confusion. "The vessel appears to be of unknown design." Vortak's 4 eyes focused on the main display as the tactical computer began analyzing the approaching ship. What he saw made him laugh, a harsh sound that echoed through the bridge. The vessel was tiny compared to his own ship, perhaps 1/10 the size. Its hull appeared to be constructed from crude metal plates welded together in an almost primitive fashion. Energy readings showed it was powered by simple fusion reactors, technology the Empire had abandoned centuries ago in favor of antimatter drives. "Probably another lost mining vessel from the outer colonies," Vortak muttered to his second-in-command, Commander Thylex. "These primitive species never learned to stay in their designated sectors." The strange ship continued its approach, showing no signs of the fear or respect that other species displayed when encountering Imperial vessels. Most civilizations immediately powered down their weapons and requested permission to leave Imperial space. This vessel maintained course and speed as if it owned the star system. "Sir, the vessel is responding to our standard identification request," Kextar reported, his scaled fingers dancing over his console. "They're transmitting on an unusual frequency, but our translators are working on it." "Put it on the main screen," Vortak ordered, settling back in his chair to enjoy what would surely be a brief and amusing conversation with another backward species. The view screen flickered to life, and Vortak found himself looking at something he had never seen before. The being on the screen appeared to be bipedal, with pale pink skin and a covering of short brown hair on its head. It wore what looked like a military uniform of dark blue fabric with various insignia and decorations. Most striking were its eyes, small and round, but holding an intelligence and determination that seemed oddly familiar. "This is Captain James Mitchell of the United Earth ship Resolute," the creature said in a calm, clear voice. "You have entered territorial space claimed by the United Earth Coalition. State your business here immediately." Vortak's mandibles clicked together in what passed for laughter among his species. The audacity of this tiny vessel claiming territorial rights in Imperial space was beyond amusing. It was insulting. Around the bridge, his crew exchanged glances of disbelief. A ship that looked like it had been assembled in a scrapyard was making demands of the Galactic Empire. "Little creature," Vortak replied, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had conquered dozens of star systems, "you are in violation of Imperial space. Your primitive vessel will power down its weapons immediately and submit to boarding and inspection. Any resistance will result in your destruction." The human, for that was apparently what this species called itself, showed no sign of fear or submission. Instead, the being called Mitchell leaned forward slightly in what appeared to be a command chair of his own, though it looked uncomfortable and purely functional compared to the luxury of Vortak's position. "Admiral, I'm reading your ship is carrying approximately 50,000 crew members," Mitchell said, consulting what looked like a primitive display screen. "That's a lot of lives for you to risk over a misunderstanding. This system has been claimed and settled by Earth for the past 15 years. Our territorial markers were placed according to standard galactic law." "Galactic law?" Vortak roared, rising from his chair. "The Galactic Empire is galactic law. There is no authority higher than ours in this galaxy. Your pathetic little world will submit or be destroyed." For a moment, something flickered across the human's features, an expression Vortak couldn't quite read. It might have been sadness or disappointment or something else entirely. When Mitchell spoke again, his voice carried a weight that seemed inappropriate for someone commanding such a small vessel. "Admiral, I've reviewed your ship's specifications through our sensor scans. Impressive firepower, advanced shielding, sophisticated computer systems. You clearly represent a powerful civilization." The human paused, and when he continued, there was steel in his voice. "But power isn't everything. I'm going to give you one chance to withdraw from this system peacefully. Take your fleet and leave." The bridge of the Dominator fell completely silent. In 3 decades of service, Vortak had never heard such words spoken to an Imperial admiral. The sheer impossibility of a vessel 1/10 their size making such a demand left his crew speechless. Even the normally efficient background hum of the ship's system seemed muted. "You dare threaten me?" Vortak snarled, his claws extending as his anger rose. "I have enough firepower to reduce your little ship to cosmic dust with a single salvo." Mitchell's expression remained unchanged. "Yes, you probably do. But the question you should be asking yourself, Admiral, is whether you can afford the cost of finding out what happens next." The transmission cut abruptly, leaving the main screen displaying the tactical view of the human vessel. It maintained its position between the Imperial fleet and the inner system, showing no signs of backing down despite being hopelessly outmatched. "Sir," Commander Thylek said quietly, "shall we destroy them?" Vortak stared at the small ship on his screen. Something about this situation felt wrong, though he couldn't identify exactly what. The humans showed no fear, made no attempt to flee, and seemed almost confident in their ability to face the might of the Imperial fleet. It was impossible, but there it was. "Deploy boarding shuttles," he ordered finally. "I want to know what makes these creatures so arrogant. Capture their command crew alive. I have questions for them." Commander Thex adjusted his combat armor one final time as the boarding shuttle approached the human vessel. Behind him, 19 of the Empire's finest Catharian shock troops checked their plasma rifles and energy shields. These warriors had conquered dozens of species across the galaxy, and their reputation for swift, brutal efficiency was legendary throughout Imperial space. "Remember, we want prisoners," Thex announced over the comm system as their shuttle drew closer to the crude human ship. "The Admiral wants to question their leadership before we execute them." Through the shuttle's small viewport, the human vessel looked even more pathetic up close. The hull was actually made of steel plates welded together with visible seam lines. Primitive chemical thrusters provided maneuvering capability, and what appeared to be simple kinetic weapons protruded from gun ports along the ship's sides. Thex had seen more advanced technology on backwater mining colonies. "Sir, their hull composition is showing as iron-carbon alloy," reported Sergeant Vex from the sensor station. "Our cutting tools will go through it like paper." The other troops chuckled at this. Iron and carbon, materials so primitive that most civilized species used them only for decorative purposes. The humans apparently built their warships out of what the Empire considered basic construction materials. "Deploy cutting beam," Thex ordered as they reached the human airlock. The Imperial cutting tools made quick work of the outer hull, slicing through the metal like it was soft clay. Warning lights flashed in the human ship as atmosphere began venting, but the breach sealed itself almost immediately with some kind of emergency system. "Breach successful. All troops, advance and secure the vessel," Thex commanded, leading his warriors through the smoking hole in the human ship's side. The first thing that struck Thex was how cramped everything felt inside the human vessel. The corridors were narrow, the ceilings low, and every surface seemed to serve multiple purposes. Pipes and conduits ran along the walls in plain sight, and the lighting was harsh and practical rather than comfortable. It felt more like the inside of a machine than a place where people lived and worked. "This way to their command center," Thex said, consulting his tactical scanner. The ship's layout was surprisingly complex for such a small vessel, with multiple redundant pathways and what appeared to be numerous sealed compartments. They had advanced perhaps 50 meters when the first human appeared. The creature was smaller than Thex had expected, wearing a simple gray uniform and carrying what looked like an ancient projectile weapon. For a moment, both sides stared at each other in the narrow corridor. Then the human spoke into a small communication device. "Contact. Section 7. Multiple hostiles." The words were barely out of the human's mouth when everything went wrong for the Imperial boarding party. The corridor lights suddenly cut out, plunging them into darkness. Emergency lighting flickered on, casting everything in a red glow that made it difficult to see clearly. At the same time, a loud alarm began sounding throughout the ship, and Thex could hear the distinctive sound of bulkhead doors slamming shut. "Move. Secure that human," Thex shouted, raising his plasma rifle. But the human was already gone, vanishing into what appeared to be a maintenance shaft that Thex's scanner hadn't detected. Before the Imperial troops could react, more humans appeared from side passages and hidden positions, firing their primitive kinetic weapons with devastating accuracy. What shocked Thex most wasn't the weapons themselves, though the solid projectile somehow managed to penetrate Catharian energy shields through sheer concentrated firepower. It was how the humans fought. They used every aspect of their ship as a weapon against the invaders. Artificial gravity cut out in sections of the corridor, sending Imperial troops floating helplessly while the humans moved with practiced ease, using handholds and magnetic boots to maintain their positions. Emergency vents opened suddenly, creating pressure differentials that disrupted Catharian formations and sent equipment flying. Bulkhead doors opened and closed with perfect timing, separating the boarding party and allowing the humans to engage smaller groups. Fall back to checkpoint Alpha, Thex ordered, but even as he spoke, he realized the humans had somehow sealed the route behind them. His tactical scanner showed that blast doors throughout the ship had activated, creating a maze that seemed to funnel his troops exactly where the humans wanted them. Sergeant Vex appeared beside him, his armor smoking from multiple projectile hits. "Sir, they're not fighting like any species we've encountered. It's like they know exactly how our equipment works." As if to prove his point, one of the human defenders appeared at the end of the corridor carrying what looked like a jury-rigged energy weapon cobbled together from Imperial components. The device fired a crackling bolt of electricity that overloaded 3 Catharian suits simultaneously, leaving the warriors inside unconscious. "How did they build that so quickly?" Vex demanded. Thex didn't have an answer. The humans seemed to understand Imperial technology better than some Imperial engineers, despite never having encountered it before. They were adapting and improvising with a speed that defied explanation. The battle continued for what felt like hours but was probably only minutes. The humans used hit-and-run tactics, striking from unexpected directions and then vanishing into parts of their ship that seemed to exist in dimensions Thex's scanner couldn't map. They coordinated their attacks with a precision that suggested years of training together, and they fought with an intensity that reminded Thex uncomfortably of cornered predators. When the retreat order finally came, only 8 of his original 20 warriors made it back to the shuttle. The others were either dead or unconscious, overwhelmed by an enemy that fought like nothing in Imperial experience. As the shuttle pulled away from the human vessel, Thex looked back at the small ship that had just handed the Empire's elite troops their worst defeat in decades. The hull still looked primitive and crude, but now he understood that appearances could be deceiving. "Sir," Vex said quietly, "what do we tell the Admiral?" Thex stared at the human ship, watching as it began to maneuver with an agility that seemed impossible for something built so heavily. "We tell him the truth. We tell him that we just met something we've never encountered before." Captain James Mitchell stood in the cramped command center of the UES Resolute, his hands gripping the metal railing that surrounded his captain's chair. The ship shuddered under another barrage from the massive Imperial battlecruiser, and sparks flew from damaged control panels around the bridge. 200 human souls against 50,000 alien warriors? Odds that would make most species surrender without firing a shot. "Status report," Mitchell called out, his voice calm despite the chaos surrounding them. Lieutenant Emma Thompson looked up from her engineering station, her blonde hair streaked with oil from crawling through damaged conduits. "Hull integrity at 70%, sir. We've lost main power to sections 4 and 7, but backup systems are holding. The good news is their weapons are designed to punch through energy shields, not solid steel." "Tom, what's our tactical situation?" Mitchell asked his weapons officer. Commander Tom Harrison grinned from behind his console, even as another Imperial blast rocked the ship. "Their targeting systems are impressive, but they're not used to fighting something that moves like we do. They keep trying to lock onto our main reactor, but our engine configuration doesn't match anything in their databases." Through the main viewing port, the Imperial battlecruiser loomed like a metal mountain. The vessel was easily 20 times larger than the Resolute, bristling with weapons that could vaporize cities. Its sleek hull gleamed with advanced armor plating and energy shields shimmered around its surface like a protective bubble. "Emma, tell me you found a way into their systems," Mitchell said, watching as another flight of Imperial fighter drones launched from the enemy ship's hangar bays. Thompson's fingers danced across her keyboard, and lines of code scrolled rapidly down her screen. "Their security is sophisticated but predictable, sir. It's like they've never faced anyone who actually tried to break in from the outside. All their countermeasures assume the attacker will use their own technology." "What do you mean?" Mitchell asked, moving to look over her shoulder at the display. "They build everything with the assumption that their enemies will follow the same rules they do," Thompson explained, highlighting sections of Imperial code. "Their computer systems are designed to repel attacks from other Imperial-style computers. But our systems developed independently. We're not following their rules at all." On the main screen, Admiral Vorthak's face appeared, his alien features twisted with rage and confusion. "Human vessel, you will surrender immediately. My ship carries enough firepower to destroy your pathetic craft 100 times over." Mitchell activated the communication system, his expression unchanged. "Admiral, you're welcome to try. But I should warn you, we've been studying your ship's weaknesses for the past 20 minutes. "Impossible," Vorthak roared. "Our technology is centuries ahead of your primitive systems." "Maybe," Mitchell replied. "But advanced doesn't always mean better. Emma, show the Admiral what we've learned. Thompson's fingers flew over her console, and suddenly the Imperial battlecruiser's own weapons began turning on each other. Point defense guns that were designed to shoot down incoming missiles started targeting the ship's communication arrays. Automated repair drones began dismantling recently installed components, following new programming instructions that Thompson had slipped into their control systems. How is this possible? Vorthak's image flickered as communication systems throughout his ship began failing. Simple, Mitchell explained. Your technology is so advanced that it's completely automated. Your crew doesn't actually understand how most of your systems work, they just push buttons and trust the computers to handle everything. But computers can be reprogrammed if you know how. Harrison looked up from his weapons console with a satisfied expression. Sir, I've got control of 12 of their fighter drones. Their remote piloting system was easy to hack once Emma gave me the access codes. On the tactical display, Mitchell watched as the hijacked Imperial drones began attacking their own squadrons. The remaining drone fighters found themselves caught in a chaotic battle, unsure which targets were friendly and which were hostile. Tom, what about their main weapons? Mitchell asked. Working on it, sir, Harrison replied, his hands moving quickly over his controls. Their targeting computers are incredibly sophisticated, but they're designed to lock onto energy signatures and shield frequencies. Our ship doesn't generate the right kind of signatures for their systems to understand. The Resolute spun through space with an agility that seemed impossible for a ship built from steel plates and powered by fusion reactors. While the Imperial vessel was larger and more powerful, it moved like the massive battleship it was, slow to turn and dependent on long-range weapons. The human ship danced around it like a fighter plane attacking a bomber. Emma, can you access their life support systems? Mitchell asked. Thompson paused in her typing, looking up with concern. Sir, that could kill thousands of people. Not to hurt them, Mitchell clarified. Just to prove a point. A few moments later, the lights throughout the Imperial battlecruiser began flickering in a specific pattern. 3 short flashes, 3 long flashes, 3 short flashes again. Vorthak's face reappeared on the communication screen, his alien features pale with shock. That signal? How do you know our emergency code? Because we've been listening to your communications for years, Mitchell replied calmly. Your empire has been expanding across the galaxy, conquering species after species. But you made one mistake, Admiral. You assumed that every species would develop technology the same way you did. The Imperial ship's weapons had stopped firing, not because they were disabled, but because Vorthak had ordered his crew to cease fire. The Admiral stared at the small human vessel that had just demonstrated the ability to take control of his entire ship's systems. What do you want? Vorthak asked, his voice quiet. Mitchell looked around his bridge at his crew, engineers and soldiers who had trained for this moment their entire lives. We want you to understand something, Admiral. Humanity didn't reach the stars by conquering weaker species. We got here by fighting each other for thousands of years. We learned to win battles we shouldn't be able to win, because losing meant extinction. The communication screen went dark as Mitchell cut the transmission, leaving the Imperial Admiral to contemplate the small ship that had just taught the Galactic Empire a lesson in warfare. Admiral Zethros paced back and forth across the command center of Imperial High Command, his claws clicking against the polished metal floor. The massive holographic display in the center of the room showed tactical feeds from across 3 star sectors, and every single feed told the same impossible story. A single human vessel was not only surviving against the Empire's Third Fleet, it was winning. Explain to me again how this is possible, Zethros demanded, turning to face his intelligence chief, Colonel Rex. The younger officer's scales had turned a pale color that indicated extreme stress among his species. Sir, we've been studying the combat footage for the past 2 hours, Rex replied, his voice shaking slightly. The human ship appears to be using our own technology against us, but not in any way we understand. They're not just hacking our systems, they're thinking about them in completely different ways. On the main display, the battle between the UES Resolute and Admiral Vorthak's battlecruiser continued to play out. The human vessel moved through space with sharp, angular movements that seemed to defy physics. It would accelerate rapidly in one direction, then immediately reverse course without any apparent deceleration period. How are they maneuvering like that? Zethros asked. Our sensors show they're using primitive fusion drives. That's what we thought at first, Colonel Rex said, bringing up a detailed analysis on a secondary screen. But their fusion drives aren't like ours. We use fusion power to create energy that powers our engines. They're using controlled fusion explosions as direct thrust. It's incredibly dangerous and inefficient, but it gives them acceleration patterns our targeting computers can't predict. Zethros studied the tactical display with growing alarm. The human ship wasn't just random in its movements. There was a pattern, a logic that his best military minds couldn't understand. It was like watching someone play a familiar game by completely different rules. "Bring up everything we have on this species called humans," he ordered. The holographic display shifted to show a compilation of intelligence reports. What appeared on the screen made Zethros feel cold despite the warm temperature of the command center. The reports painted a picture of a species that had developed along lines the Empire had never encountered before. "Sir, their homeworld appears to be unusually hostile," Colonel Rex reported, reading from the data streams. "High gravity, extreme weather patterns, and multiple competing ecosystems. Most species that evolve on such worlds never develop space technology because survival requires too much energy. But humans did develop space technology," Zethros observed. "Yes, sir. But not the way most species do. Most civilizations achieve spaceflight after they've unified their planet and eliminated warfare. Humans reached space while they were still fighting each other." The implications of this hit Zethros like a physical blow. Every species the Empire had conquered had followed the same basic pattern. They developed advanced technology through peaceful cooperation, then expanded into space to find resources and territory. When the Empire arrived with superior weapons and tactics, these peaceful species had no choice but to surrender or be destroyed. "You're telling me that humans developed space technology as a weapon?" Zethros asked. "Not exactly, sir. But their entire technological development was shaped by constant conflict. Every innovation had to serve multiple purposes, every system had to work under combat conditions, and every design had to assume that enemies would try to turn it against them." On the tactical display, the human ship was now using the Imperial battlecruiser's own drone fighters against it. The small fighter craft that should have overwhelmed the human vessel were instead attacking their mother ship, following new programming that someone aboard the Resolute had somehow installed remotely. "How did they break our encryption?" Zethros demanded. Colonel Rex consulted his data pad nervously. "Sir, they didn't break it. They ignored it. Our encryption is designed to prevent other Imperial computers from accessing our systems. But human computers work on completely different principles. It's like, imagine if someone built a lock that was impossible to pick, but then someone else came along with a key that was the wrong shape but still opened the door." More reports were flooding in from across Imperial space. The emergency communication channels were buzzing with confused transmissions from fleet commanders who had previously dismissed small human vessels as minor threats. "Admiral Korthek reports 3 human ships have appeared in the Vega system," Colonel Rex announced, reading from incoming messages. "Admiral Thymon says 4 unknown vessels just emerged from what we thought was an asteroid mining operation in the Tau Ceti sector. Admiral Glex is requesting reinforcements to deal with what he calls impossible human tactics near the Proxima colonies." Zethros stared at the star map as red indicators began appearing across known space. Each indicator represented Imperial forces in contact with human vessels, ships that had been present in those systems for months or years, catalogued as primitive exploration craft or harmless mining vessels. "How many human ships are out there?" he asked quietly. "Unknown, sir. Our current estimates range from 50 to 500 vessels. They've been conducting what appears to be long-term reconnaissance operations throughout Imperial space, and we never noticed because we dismissed their technology as irrelevant." The strategic implications were staggering. The Galactic Empire had been infiltrated by a species they had never taken seriously. Human ships had been watching Imperial fleet movements, studying their tactics and preparing for this moment for years. "Sir, there's something else," Colonel Rex said hesitantly. "The intelligence reports suggest that the human vessels aren't operating independently. They're part of a coordinated network. Every ship that's revealed itself today has done so at precisely the same time, across hundreds of light-years of space." Zethros felt his certainty about Imperial superiority crumbling. The Empire had always succeeded by overwhelming technologically inferior species with superior firepower and coordination. But humans appeared to have developed technology and tactics specifically designed to counter those advantages. "Get me a direct line to the Imperial Council," he ordered. "We need to reassess everything we thought we knew about this species." On the main display, the battle between the Resolute and Vorthax's fleet continued, but now it looked less like a hopeless last stand and more like a carefully planned demonstration of human capabilities. Captain James Mitchell walked slowly around the bridge of the UES Resolute, checking on each of his crew members as they worked at their stations. The massive Imperial battlecruiser Dominator drifted powerless in space before them, its weapons offline and its communication systems under human control. What had started as an impossible battle against overwhelming odds had ended with the complete defeat of one of the Empire's most advanced warships. "Download complete, sir," Lieutenant Emma Thompson reported from her engineering station. Her uniform was torn and stained with grease, but her voice carried the satisfaction of a job well done. "We've copied their entire tactical database, fleet deployment schedules, communication protocols, and star charts. Earth Command will know everything the Empire knows about galactic military operations." Commander Tom Harrison looked up from his weapons console with a tired smile. "Transmission confirmed, sir. The data package reached Earth Command 17 minutes ago. By now, every human ship in the galaxy will have access to Imperial fleet positions and tactical procedures." Mitchell nodded and activated the communication system. On the main screen, Admiral Vortak's alien face appeared, though the proud bearing he had shown hours earlier was gone. The Imperial commander looked like someone who had just watched his entire understanding of the universe collapse. "Admiral," Mitchell said calmly, "I want you to understand something. This wasn't a battle. This was a demonstration. Your ship, your crew, your technology, they're all fine. We could have destroyed you, but that was never our intention." Vortak's 4 eyes focused on the human captain with a mixture of fear and confusion. "What do you want from us?" Mitchell moved to stand directly in front of the communication screen. Behind him, his bridge crew continued their work with the quiet efficiency that had allowed 200 humans to defeat 50,000 Imperial troops. "We want you to deliver a message to your high command. Tell them that humanity is not interested in conquest or domination. We don't want to rule the galaxy." "Then what do you want?" Vortak asked. "We want to be left alone," Mitchell replied. "For 15 years, we've been expanding quietly through this region of space, establishing colonies and trade routes. We've watched your empire conquer species after species, and we've been preparing for the day when you would notice us." On tactical displays throughout Imperial space, similar scenes were playing out. Human vessels that had masqueraded as harmless exploration ships or mining craft were revealing their true capabilities. The Defiant had disabled an entire Imperial patrol squadron near Alpha Centauri. The Intrepid had taken control of a military supply depot in the Rigel system. The Valiant had captured an Imperial intelligence gathering station without firing a single shot. At Imperial High Command, Admiral Zethros stood before the emergency session of the High Council, watching as reports flooded in from across the galaxy. The holographic display showed dozens of human ships emerging from hiding, each one demonstrating technological capabilities that defied Imperial understanding. "Members of the Council," Zethros began, his voice heavy with the weight of what he had to report, "we are not dealing with a primitive species. We are facing a civilization that approaches warfare and technology from a completely different evolutionary path." The High Chancellor, an ancient being whose species had been part of the Empire for over 1,000 years, leaned forward in his ornate chair. "Explain." "Humans evolved on a world where survival required constant adaptation and innovation," Zethros said, bringing up intelligence reports on the main display. "While most species achieved spaceflight after eliminating warfare from their societies, humans reached the stars while still fighting each other. Every piece of their technology, every tactical doctrine, every strategic principle has been tested under combat conditions." The council chamber fell silent as the implications became clear. The Galactic Empire had succeeded for centuries by overwhelming less advanced species with superior technology and organization. But humans had developed their entire civilization around the assumption that they would always be outnumbered and outgunned. "How many human worlds are there?" asked Council Member Vrex. "Unknown," Zethros replied. "Our estimates suggest dozens of established colonies, with possibly hundreds more in various stages of development. They've been expanding through regions of space we considered too dangerous or too resource-poor for colonization." Back aboard the Resolute, Captain Mitchell prepared to end the communication with Admiral Vortak. The Imperial commander had listened in silence as Mitchell explained the reality of humanity's presence in the galaxy. "Your empire made the mistake of assuming that advanced technology always means superior warfare," Mitchell said. "But humans learned something different during our history. We learned that the best technology is technology that works when everything else fails, when you're outnumbered, when your enemy has better weapons, when survival depends on making impossible things possible." The communication screen flickered as Imperial technicians attempted to regain control of their own systems. But every attempt was blocked by human countermeasures that seemed to anticipate their every move. "Tell your leaders that we're not looking for a war," Mitchell continued. "But we're prepared for one if necessary. We've spent 15 years studying your tactics, your technology, and your weaknesses. We know how your empire fights, and we've developed methods to counter every advantage you possess. Admiral Vortax stared at the human captain with something approaching respect. What happens now? Now you go back to your high command and tell them the truth, Mitchell replied. Tell them that humanity is not a species to be conquered. We're a potential ally or a dangerous enemy. The choice is theirs. The transmission ended, leaving the bridge of the Resolute in quiet contemplation. Through the main viewing port, the crew could see the Imperial battlecruiser beginning to restore power to its systems. In a few hours, it would return to Imperial space carrying news that would change the balance of power in the galaxy. Orders, sir? Commander Harrison asked. Mitchell looked out at the stars, knowing that human ships throughout the galaxy were asking the same question. The demonstration was complete. The Empire now knew that humanity existed, and that they were not helpless prey to be conquered. Set course for Earth, he said quietly. It's time to go home and prepare for whatever comes next.